The flowers we carry the autumn wind moved through Riverside Cemetery with a whisper that seemed to carry voices from another time. Leaves drifted down like golden tears, settling among the headstones that stood in silent rows across the hillside. The afternoon light was soft and gray, the kind of light that makes everything feel distant and dreamlike. Sarah Mitchell walked slowly along the familiar path, her daughter Emma balanced on her hip. The little girl was 3 years old, with curls the color of honey and eyes that seemed to notice everything. In Sarah's other hand, she carried a cloth bag that held a single bunch of white chrysanthemums, the cheapest flowers she could find at the corner store. Her shoes were worn thin at the soles. Her coat, though clean and carefully mended, had seen too many winters. But she held her head up as she walked, because that's what her mother had taught her to do. Even when life pushes you down, her mother used to say, "You stand up straight." Sarah reached the grave she'd been visiting every week for the past year. The headstone was simple granite, with just a name and 2 dates. Margaret Ann Mitchell, Sarah's mother, the woman who had raised her alone, who had worked 2 jobs to keep a roof over their heads, who had never once complained about how hard things were. Sarah knelt down carefully, settling Emma beside her on the grass. The little girl immediately reached for a fallen leaf, examining it with the serious concentration that only children possess. "Hi, Mom," Sarah said softly, her voice catching slightly. She began clearing away the dead flowers from last week, pulling a few weeds that had grown around the base of the stone. "I brought Emma again. She's getting so big. I wish you could see her." The words came easily now, though they still hurt. She told her mother about Emma's new words, about the way she laughed at everything, about the job Sarah had finally found at the diner downtown. It didn't pay much, but it was something. It was a start. Then Sarah's voice grew quieter. "I'm trying, Mom. I'm really trying, but it's so hard sometimes. The rent went up again. Emma needs new shoes. I don't know how I'm going to make it through the winter." A tear slipped down her cheek, then another. She wiped them away quickly, not wanting Emma to see. But once they started, they wouldn't stop. All the fear and exhaustion and loneliness she'd been holding inside came pouring out in silent sobs that shook her shoulders. She didn't hear the footsteps approaching until a man's voice spoke gently behind her. "Excuse me." Sarah startled, grabbing Emma close. She turned to see a man standing a few feet away, holding a large bouquet of white chrysanthemums, the same flowers she'd brought, but his were fuller, more beautiful, the kind that came from an expensive florist. He was tall, perhaps in his mid-40s, with gray beginning to show at his temples. His dark suit was perfectly tailored, his black wool coat expensive and well made, but his eyes were red, rimmed, and his face carried the kind of sadness that goes bone deep. "I'm sorry," the man said, and his voice was rough with emotion. "I didn't mean to intrude. It's just that. Those are my wife's favorite flowers, white chrysanthemums, and when I saw you here..." Sarah followed his gaze and realized he was looking at the grave next to her mother's. She'd never paid much attention to it before, never read the name carefully. But now she saw it clearly. Elizabeth Marie Bradford, beloved wife. The dates showed she'd died just 6 months ago. She'd been only 38 years old. "I'm so sorry," Sarah said, wiping her eyes. "I didn't realize." "No, please," the man said, taking a step closer. "I should apologize for interrupting. I come here every day, same time. I've seen you before with your daughter. You come every week, don't you?" Sarah nodded, unsure what to say. The man looked at her more closely now, taking in her worn coat, her thin shoes, the careful way she held her daughter. "That's your mother's grave?" he asked gently. "Yes, she died a year ago, cancer. She didn't have insurance, and by the time they found it..." Sarah's voice trailed off. The man was quiet for a moment. Then he said something that surprised her. "Would you mind if I sat down, just for a minute?" Sarah shook her head, and the man lowered himself to the grass beside his wife's grave, setting his flowers down carefully. He didn't seem to care that the damp ground might stain his expensive suit. "My name is James," he said. "James Bradford. My wife Elizabeth, she died in a car accident. A drunk driver ran a red light." He paused, his jaw tightening. One moment we were planning our future, talking about starting a family. The next moment she was gone. "I'm Sarah," she said quietly. "And this is Emma." Emma, sensing the heavy emotions around her, had grown still and watchful. She reached out a small hand and patted James's arm, the way children do when they sense someone needs comfort. James looked at the little girl, and something in his expression softened. "Hello, Emma," he said. They sat together in silence for a while, two strangers bound by grief and the autumn afternoon. Finally, James spoke again. "I heard what you said, about struggling, about being afraid." He turned to look at Sarah directly. "After Elizabeth died, I threw myself into work. I run a company, Bradford Industries. We make medical equipment. Elizabeth always said I should do more with the money, help people who really needed it, but I was always too busy, always making excuses." He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a business card. "We're looking for someone to run our new charitable foundation. Someone who understands what it's like to struggle, who knows what real people need. Someone who could help us make a difference in the right way." Sarah stared at the card, not understanding. "The position pays well," James continued. "Very well. It comes with benefits, health insurance, everything you'd need. I saw you with your daughter, saw how much you love her, how hard you're trying. I think you might be exactly who we need." "But you don't even know me," Sarah whispered. "I know you come here every week to talk to your mother," James said. "I know you bring flowers even when you probably can't afford them. I know you're teaching your daughter kindness and respect. I know grief when I see it, and I know strength too. Elizabeth would have liked you." Sarah's hands trembled as she held the card. It didn't feel real. Things like this didn't happen to people like her. "Why?" she asked. "Why are you doing this?" James looked at his wife's grave, then back at Sarah. "Because Elizabeth spent her whole life believing in helping others, and I didn't listen enough when she was alive. Because I see you trying so hard, and I have the ability to help. Because maybe this is what I'm supposed to do with everything I have left." He paused. "Because we all need someone to believe in us sometimes." The wind picked up, scattering leaves across both graves. Sarah pulled Emma close, looking down at the business card in her hand, then up at this stranger who had just offered her a lifeline. "Call on Monday," James said, standing up slowly. He placed his flowers on Elizabeth's grave with infinite gentleness. "We'll talk properly then, but Sarah," he looked at her one more time, "I think this might help both of us."